Hello everyone, welcome to Chaplin Talks. Today I am in Bristol at the Slapstick Comedy Festival, which is a really cool festival because they show all classic comedy films, silent comedy films. I'm going to speak to people who organize the things. There's lots going on, so follow me in and I'll show you some more. We're here with Chris Daniels, who is, are you the founder of the Slapstick Festival?
Founder and director.
And director.
Director of Slapstick Festival, yes.
Okay, so first of all, let me say thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
A short notice as well.
Yes, yeah, no, it's great to have you on board.
And explain a little bit the history, how this came about. Would you say you show all silent films or old films?
It's silent comedy.
Comedy,
really. I
okay.
guess what we now say is we would say slapstick is silent visual classic comedy. So we do run to things like we might screen the Marx Brothers, which are talkies, but generally the focus is silent comedy really, and we champion Chaplin, Keaton, Lloyd, Laurel and Hardy, and then we do a deeper dive around performers that aren't so well known now, like Marion Davis or Mary Pickford, Mabel Normand, those kinds of Harry Langdon, so silent comedy, plus Jacques Tati, visual comedy, and then classic comedy. We'd be looking at, we've had things like Ian Lavender talking about Dad's Army, say, and It's Private Pike, so those kinds of things. So classic and silent comedy,
Yeah, that's great. So you started in what year?
2005.
So it's been going for a while.
Yes, it is. And it's a funny thing because my son was born in 2005, Joshua. So as he's getting older, I realise how old I am and how long the festival has been running because he's 16 now, almost 17.
That's great.
But this is our 18th edition. I'm not sure how that works out. But yes, this is the 18th edition this year, even though last year was online because of the COVID pandemic.
Okay. And so, were you introduced to silent comedy at a young age? How did it work? What made you want to start the festival?
Yeah, it's interesting because I wasn't a fan of silent comedy, and most people had either a parent who showed them when they were younger. I watched a lot of Laurel and Hardy, but I didn't enjoy or see Charlie Chaplin. So I was given an 8mm projector, and I was given these free films, and that they came free with it because they were silent. And I loved the Laurel and Hardy. I didn't like the Buster Keaton, and I didn't like the Charlie Chaplin film. And it was because they were running way too fast. So they were running really, really quickly, and they were heavily edited, so they were only about 4 minutes or so. When I moved to Bristol, I did a film studies course as an adult, and it was there, they did a silent film study day here at Watershed in Bristol.
Oh, really?
And I saw Sunrise, Murnau Sunrise. I was shown extracts from the Odessa step sequence of Battleship Potemkin, an extract from Abulgazi's Napoleon, and then along with that, I was shown an extract of, I think it was probably Gold Rush, might have been The Kid.
Yeah.
And I remember re-evaluating my perception of Chaplin as an artist then, and then thinking about silent film differently. And for a while, I became this evangelical person going, oh my God, the people know how great silent film is. They're masterpieces. Not that silent films are better than talkies, but the best silent films are easily as good as the very best. They stand shoulder to shoulder with the very best.
I would agree. I would absolutely agree. And as well, I think in the last couple of years, some of the stuff that I found very interesting is once you start realizing, I mean, I can only talk about my grandfather's films, but for example, City Lights, you find out that it was actually made during a time when talkies were already a thing. He didn't want to, do talking films. So when you watch the beginning of City Lights, there's that bit where the guy's making a speech in the town, and his voice comes out, but it's just complete gibberish, and it's like almost like a kazoo sound.
Yeah.
And once you start realizing and making the connections and all that kind of stuff, you actually appreciate it a lot more.
And that really demonstrates Chaplin's genius too, because he uses sound in a kind of subversive way to show how fantastic the best talkies were.
Yeah.
So it's 4 years after the talkies, really, or after the advent of the talkies, and then he has the clout as a performer to still not only make a film but make a masterpiece of a film. And one of the things I love about Chaplin, just to jump straight into some of that, is that he was able to stand alone because of his independence and make films consistently against the advice of everyone around him. So his shoulder arms. First word, no one can make a film about a world war. It won't be a great dictator, you know. And on a number of occasions, making these kind of masterpiece films. City Lights, you can't make a silent film in the talkie era.
Yeah.
How brave and courageous was he to make those films?
Absolutely.
With his own personal fortune at risk too. So that's a real sign of my admiration for him around that risk taking and that artistry, the genius of thinking, I believe in this work so much that even though everyone around me is uncertain, I will see it through. And then we've got this legacy of these incredible films.
Yeah, no, it's true. But some of these other guys, Buster Keaton, the stunts are just amazing. I mean, seeing how there's no trickery back then. You know, if a guy wants to go through the window of a falling building, you know, he's just got to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like in 1 week when you see the house spinning and he's running, he's on a full-size set with a full house, jumping on it, running around. The kind of thing that you would never get clearance today. You'd never get an insurance company to support an artist of his stature because they wouldn't trust that he'd be safe. Or even Harold Lloyd in Safety Last, even though there's a platform 18 feet below him, he's really up that high.
Oh, yeah.
People still think it must be green screen or blue screen or something.
No.
Back screen projection, but there wasn't any, or it certainly wasn't used. So it's just, these performers are exceptional and breathtaking. I think that's why so many people still, 100 years on, still want to watch these films and are still interested in them.
Yeah, and do you have a favorite of that era? Maybe a favorite actor, or you know, I don't know if Laurel and Hardy as a group, or.
Yeah, I don't really, because I've never really had that sensibility. I know some people are really passionate about a particular artist. I think for me, what I love is we have a silent comedy gala every year, and we choose one of the finest silent comedies of all time, and then we put that event on to a large audience. This year it's The Cameraman with Buster Keaton. It's the first time we've streamed it, and we'll have a live ensemble performance. And it's 1 year I'm in love with the genius of Buster Keaton, but we've just seen The Circus, which is a masterpiece, and watching those scenes again and seeing Chaplin in a lion's cage working and, you know, finding humour and improvising and working with a lion in the same space. It's just exceptional stuff. And the person I would say closest to that level of commitment now, and madness sort of, is Tom Cruise. Because Tom Cruise is mad enough to hold on to the outside of an airplane.
Exactly.
And that was shot 3 times, that sequence where he's on wires attached to it, but he's outside the plane.
Exactly.
It's the kind of thing Keaton would have done.
Mission Impossible, there's a scene where he is in a helicopter, and the helicopter doing all these crazy maneuvers. So he just learned to fly a helicopter. You know?
Yes.
It's true. That's very true. It's a good comparison.
He's not funny though. but he's the stunt genius.
I have a feeling,
21st century.
You guys will probably correct me on this, but I don't think I'm wrong. You know the film Chaplin with Robert Downey Jr.?
Yes.
I think Tom Cruise was originally going to be... He was going to be one of them. I think Dustin Hoffman was in the running. Tom Cruise and Robert Downey Jr. I think we're the 3.
Wow. That would be
I
fascinating.
could be talking crap, but
Can we find out? Google will know.
You know, so let's see. Because it's just sprung to mind, so I don't know. But Sasha Baron Cohen's another one from these days as well, who's quite political.
Yes, that's right. I mean, there are some brave comedians too. And I'm not one of those people who think those were the days. I think there are great films that are made today, and there's you can see real progress and in films too. But it's about what I felt originally when I first discovered the films, and I founded sort of Bristol Silence with my film studies tutor Norman Taylor. We just thought these films are incredible. Let's not just sit on them and have a little club and watch them in the attic together. Let's try and build an audience for it, and that's what Slapstick became. First with Paul Merton, who was passionate about silent comedy, and then after 5 years or so, working with a whole ensemble of people like Michael Palin have been along, or Victoria Wood, to champion Gloria Swanson.
Amazing,
Griff Rhys-Jones, loved Laurel Hardy. So we found people who adored the silent comedians, and then I suppose you call it celebrity endorsement, but that sounds a bit kind of, like we've got a strategy. We haven't really. We just work with people who are passionate. Just like what you're doing with the podcast. It's like you resonate with somebody who shares your passion. And it really feels like that. I mean, you've only been here briefly, I know, but it feels like a family at Slapstick to me. It feels like people come because they love the performers. We're a not-for-profit organisation, and we're here to celebrate them, including Chaplin.
No, absolutely.
In fact, Stephen Mangan, the actor, we wrote to him and asked him if he would introduce the silent comedy gala. He asked what film it was. I said it's Buster Keaton, and he said, Buster Keaton is the kind of performer that makes life worth living. So that's the way that people touch. These artists still reach back, and there's a connection. And often there's an affection from people who remember that their parents showed them the films when they were younger.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they've got that connection. We had Tim Vine, the comedian, come to talk about Sergeant Bilko, and he watched every weekend, Sundays, he'd watch Sergeant Bilko episodes with his dad.
That's great.
And he just has that affection for Bilko because it reminds him of that warm, fuzzy feeling too.
Yeah, that's great. And so, what sort of events do you have going on during the festival? Let's say this year, or let's say pre-pandemic, if you think it was. For example.
Well, we'd have a large an event as we can put on. It used to be at the Beacon, formerly known as Colson Hall, and there'd be 1,800 people. So we managed to build an audience that big after 4 or 5 years, and that show we now have moved to the Cathedral, which is a smaller venue, but that's where we are with that. And then we have a series of kind of more obscure films from silent films that have been restored in the year, things that have been discovered, and then there are smaller audiences for that. And if someone's made a documentary, like there's a Chaplin documentary presently, and then there was last year there was the new Buster Keaton documentary. So we'll screen any new content, things like that, new restorations of films, and then after that period, 4 or 5 days in the cinema here, on the weekend, we move more towards a classic comedy type experience. So we've got things like Tim Vine will say, I adored Kenny Everett. I'd like to look at his work.
It's great.
And films, those kinds of things.
So, first of all, I think the festival is just an amazing, amazing thing. And I love the fact that you guys are trying to spread the word about silent comedy. As am I, so I can really relate to that. So thank you very much.
Well, it's so. I feel really like I feel like I'm not running the festival. I feel like a fan of the festival because every time somebody says so and so's coming, or Stephen Mangan wants to host a gala, I'm amazed and touched and dazzled. We had one year I think somebody was hosting the gala. Was it Dara O'Brien? And he had a commitment with Comic Relief, and he pulled out. And then Graham Garden, who's one of our patrons, was one of the goodies, he contacted Victoria Wood, and she hosted the gala for us. So
that's so nice.
It's just extraordinary, that level of kind of love and commitment for classic comedy. And you don't really realise it at the time, but once they've passed, too young, but Victoria Wood has passed too. Terry Jones was a patron of ours.
Absolutely.
He's passed, and you realise when they're gone, just how important it was that we brought them to an audience and they had their voice, and in some instances we've been able to record it and put it on our YouTube channel.
That's great.
So we've got that's part of the legacy is that maybe we weren't able to do that so much with, there's not enough, is there, Stan and Ollie talking about their work or
No,
captured
absolutely.
on. How many interviews did Charlie Chaplin do? How many on film? It's very...
Well, it's very, very few. I think there's one on YouTube, and I can't remember if it's for the BBC, but I think there's basically only one where you can see him being interviewed by a reporter on camera.
I think all those kind of those kind of interview programs that would have been around in the 60s or even the 70s, he must have been invited endlessly to be interviewed.
That is very true, actually. Yes, I guess maybe when he did end up living in Switzerland, I guess that was his way of just relaxing and laying back and kind of having family time. Because there is footage of him going to London and speaking to people, but there are no talk show interviews. That's very true.
Yeah. And there's something quite enigmatic about that too, isn't there? Because I think that I remember Kevin Brownlow, the film historian, saying that things like with Rudolph Valentino, Gloria Swanson, in the silent days, they were bigger than that. They're on the big screen.
Yeah.
Not in the way that we have it today with YouTube, or this where you can pause it, or you have control over the screen. It's that they were bigger. They were idols in a way that we can't imagine. And I think in that way, he retained that mystery. Whereas if you're Ant and Dec, you know all the ins and outs of their relationships.
Yeah, that's very true.
And there's something quite lovely about him.
I guess he went through that though, didn't he? In America, all the different women or whatever it was, he kind of got scrutinized for it. He ended up in Switzerland. So like you say, I guess he went through that in a way. So maybe when he did go to Switzerland, maybe he was a bit more, he just tried to stay out of the spotlight, I guess.